365 can help in scenarios of false positives and false negatives. So, our agenda today will begin with a brief look at the security landscape, defining some of our terms that we'll be using, and then presenting scenarios for false negatives being reported by a user, that submission process, including the automated investigation that is triggered to automate the security operations process. We'll look at manual investigations as well, and then false positive scenarios, before we then conclude by telling you how you can try it all out yourself. So to start, as I'm sure everyone here is abundantly aware, the threat landscape continues to evolve. Threats are coming in from all fronts, and many of those are blocked before entering the space, but as tactics evolve, there are some threats that slide in and try to compromise your organization. And those are the ones that are the focus of our presentation today. The threats that do get by, and also items that appear threatening but are not, and how you can use Microsoft Defender for Office 365 to see these signals, correlate, and remediate these items when they come in, and how we continuously learn from those and continue to evolve our protection of your business. So now, again, just to define some terms that we're going to be using. First, we're describing the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 product, which we do often refer to with the acronym MDO. Our presentation is focused on false positives and false negatives. A false positive, or FP, is when something is identified as malicious, but it's not. In this scenario, you want to release that item to your users and let the system know that that didn't need to be blocked. A false negative, on the other hand, or an FN, is when something slides by. Something came in and it looked clean, but later is determined to be malicious, and it needs to be investigated and remediated. Both these scenarios occur in any email and collaboration protection solution, and today we're here to share how MDO enables the security administrators to quickly and efficiently address these. And with that, I'll pass it off to Daria to start with our first scenario.
Yep. Hi, good evening, everybody. So the first scenario is when the end user finds out about a suspicious email in the mailbox and is going to report the mail. And then we look inside like how MDO, Microsoft Defender for Office 365, goes about handling a false negative situation while automating a large chunk of it. So this is an email in my inbox which appears suspicious to me. So as you can see on the screen, I got uh, add-ins installed. One is the report message add-in, one is the report phishing add-in, depending on the organizational need of your organization. The report message allows you to report a message as phish, junk, not junk, and the report phishing, just as its name suggests, allows you to report a message as phishing. So I see a suspicious message on my Outlook. I go ahead and click on the report message add-in, and it shows me a lot of options what I want to report the message as. And then I go ahead and report this particular message as phishing. So based on the customization set up by the team's admin, I see a pop-up saying me what happens when I report a message as phish. I go ahead and report the message as phish. It can either go to Microsoft directly, or it can go up to the custom mailbox based on the admin settings. Irrespective, it shows up in the user reported messages list in security.microsoft.com, where you have insights into all the end user reported malicious emails. And when you select any one of these reports from the portal, you can see a detailed panel telling you what was the message like, uh, why did it got delivered, what were the threats, if there were any, where was it delivered, Were there any policies or overrides in play? Who was the sender? Who were the recipients and stuff like that? So there is a lot of information available on the panel. And if you click on open email entity, you can go ahead and see a lot more information like what are similar emails and stuff like that. Uh, but the most important thing is that there is a view alert option available, which links you. There's a view alert option available, which links you with investigations and incidents. And to talk more about that, I'm going to pass it back to Kelly. Kelly, you're on mute if you are speaking.
Perfect. Thanks, Daria. So as Daria mentioned, we have looking at the view alert. So if we go ahead and click that view alert, you'll see that we're highlighting here that the user reported a message and showing that alert. So if you can go ahead to the next slide, Daria, we'll see that the user reported something as malware or phish, and we're highlighting a couple of links provided with the alert. So the first is the link to the incident. An incident correlates alerts together to help the security professionals see the broader threat. So perhaps if an email went out to many of your end users and there were multiple alerts, multiple users maybe were submitting it or interacting, those would all be correlated into an incident. For today's presentation, however, we're focused on that second link highlighted here, and that is the investigation. So when the user reported that email as phish, an alert fired, and that automatically creates an investigation. The purpose of an investigation is really to automate the SecOps process. So this alert came in and it needs to be evaluated, and that is what the investigation helps you do. When we go to the investigation, it starts directly on this investigation graph where we have a summary of the information on the left-hand side there, and then the graph is showing the attack and what the investigation analyzed. So at the top, you see that the alert was received, and that then stems into the investigation below, where you see different entities that were analyzed, entities being an item that may have had an interaction or been involved. Then evidence, which is those entities that were found to have threats and be evidence of the attack. Mailbox or mailboxes involved. And then you also see that pending approval, as the investigation will analyze that broader picture of the attack and look really at that blast radius, and will make a recommendation on how to remediate items. So I do want to go deeper into one aspect of this investigation in particular. So we're now on the entities portion. That if you look at the top there, you see the entities is what we have highlighted. So we're on this entities page looking at particularly email clusters. So email clustering is the core of our investigation process. We received an alert that something bad may have come in undetected. And as security professionals, we would then be looking for what else might have come in undetected. What does this threat really look like? And what else might have been involved? We're looking for that bigger picture, since we know that there was something that came in that needed to be evaluated. So the investigation takes care of a lot of that work for you with this clustering. It looks up the makeup of the email that came in and runs a series of queries and analysis to say what else looks like this email that might also be a threat. If one came in, where are the others? So, and it does this looking at criteria similar to the message to find any of those other threats. And on this page, we're looking at those clusters. These ones are email clusters, uh, and there could be other different clusters based on the criteria or what was in that email and what triggered that initial alert. But really just kind of looking at the clusters as a whole, and as well as investigations as a whole, there's two main purposes here. The first one is maybe we're evaluating this email, the user submitted email that Daria showed, and we're not sure, like it might be malicious, it might be okay, it's kind of hard to tell. So one of those ways that you would go about looking in that situation is looking for anything else that looks similar. What else looks kind of like this email? And do those look like they're clean? Do those look like they're a threat? So the idea here is kind of see what looks similar and see if there's a clear verdict on those emails that should then be applied to this one. The way we often refer to this and the theory behind it is if you maybe had a container of strawberries and you were looking at one of your strawberries and you're like, I don't know if this strawberry is good or bad. I'm not too sure with this one. But you have your whole container of strawberries and you see that, there's quite a few of these that are looking a little fuzzy, looking a little moldy, don't look so great. This strawberry that I'm holding is probably also not great, probably also bad. And that's kind of the idea behind this clustering. Look at what else is there to apply the verdict to that one email that you might have had in question. So that's the first purpose. The second one, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the second one is just see what else is out there. If one of those, something got in that was malicious, what else looks like it that could be inside and threatening your organization? So we want to pull in all of those and make sure that those are reviewed and addressed. So really trying to automate that SecOps process through this investigation. So we'll dive in looking at one of these flyouts. So on the next slide, we see our investigation, our flyout for that email cluster, that cluster entity. So at the top, we see that the verdict on this was malicious. So we looked at all of those emails and we decided this was bad. This cluster, it's not looking good. This is a malicious cluster. So the emails within this cluster are all determined to be malicious. So we are displaying some of the counts of those emails that were associated. And then underneath, we see that latest delivery location. And in there, we see that there's an email that is still in a user's mailbox. So there's a threat still existing in the organization, and that needs to be remediated and removed. So we have that information being highlighted here. And at the top, we do see that that's the recommended action is that we need to delete this email. We need to remove it and get rid of the threat. So at the top, we do see that you can approve or reject that recommended action from this flyout. But I want to show you a little more. So in this scenario, we're not approving or rejecting from that flyout because I want to show you a couple more things that on this page. So that is the pending action. On this page, we're seeing the last little kind of tab associated with the investigation, and that's the pending action. So this is displaying, in this scenario, those different clusters. We found them to be malicious, and we are recommending that your security administrators take action on these emails as we deem them to be a threat. So this pending actions page is showing the list of recommended actions, and if we go to the flyout again, it's showing that cluster was deemed to be malicious, and there is still that email in a user's mailbox, and we recommend that you delete that. So we have those approve or reject at the top there so that you can complete that action. We'll go with approve for this one. And then we'll see on the next slide that we have that history. We approved the action. Those emails are being deleted. They're deleted. It was completed. And we've removed that threat from the environment. So that is how we've automated that SecOps process through the investigations to take a look, apply a verdict to a message that might be in question, and then also see what the blast radius, what else is out there that needs to be addressed. And we see that we've completed that in the history of this action center. Before we move along, I do just want to show you one other thing. If we're on the history of our action center right now, but if we go to the next slide, I'll show you that there's the pending. So if you wanted to just cut to the chase, see a pending action, you could go to this pending action center as well to handle and remediate, take that recommended action to remediate any of those threats in your environment. But with that, I'll pass it back to Daria.
Thanks, Kelly. That was a great explanation of how SecOps can leverage investigations to go about doing automatic investigation and remediation. So with that, we are back onto the user reported messages screen, where you can see all the messages reported by the user either as phish, junk, or not junk. So you can select the message which you have received from the user, and you can go ahead and report the message either as phishing, malware, spam, clean, or you can again trigger a manual investigation from here, as you can see on the screen. But I'm going to go ahead and report this message as phishing, which actually opens up a pop-up saying whether you want to block the domain or the sender. Uh, and how many days you want to block it for, like you wanted to block it for 7 days, 30 days, over a period of 3 months, or you just want to block it indefinitely. So you can go ahead and do it. And you can also provide a note for yourself, okay, why did I block it? So that if you come back after a week and you're like, okay, why did I block that one? You can go ahead and do that. After you provided all the information and clicked on submit as you seem fit, you are notified that the submission has been received and will get back to you with the result as soon as it's available. So that submission which you just made is shown in the emails tab of the submission screen. So we were at the user report messages tab, and the submissions which you made, it shows up in the email tab. As you can see on the screen, it's still under investigation and the status is pending. While at the same time, based on the block which you created in the tenant allow block list under threat policy, under policies and rules in domains and sender, as you were blocking either email address or the email domain. As you can see that the action of block has been performed, and I created a block for 30 days for email address who was sending the email, the sender. After a few hours, the submission portal gets updated. Mostly it's within 3 to 4 hours. And you can see the result of the email, and you can click on it and like go into more details of why it happened and what was the verdict and what's Microsoft saying right now. One of the biggest problems which we keep on hearing is that we have made a submission, we have made a block, but when will we know when the system has learned? Do we get feedback? So this is in preview already in a few limited tenants already. Once the system gets learns from a block, which is not permanent, like a one which I created, which was going to expire in 30 days, the system goes ahead and keeps on checking if we have learned from a block or not. Once we learn from the block, we fire an alert, which also means an email notification stating, okay, Microsoft has learned this. We're going to remove the entry, and the system is normally going to block this email. So this gives you the signal the system is learning. This runs the block list for you, so you don't have to manage it manually and worry about the space constraints. We do that for you. And finally, uh, if the system is not learning, we're going to go ahead and extend the expiry of that block automatically for you so that you don't face the wrath of the same false negative or malicious email sender targeting your organization again. Now I'm going to pass it back to Kelly to talk more about manual investigations.
Perfect. Thanks, Daria. So what the scenario we just went through was a user-reported scenario, but there are many other alerts within the system that would trigger those automated investigations and automate the SecOps process for you based on those alerts. So we went through one scenario, but I do want to just make sure that you're aware that there's many other alerts that would come in and trigger this process as well. However, right now I want to go over how you could manually trigger an investigation. So on this page, this is our Explorer page. This page is used by security administrators to query what's out there, take a look. It's a very user-friendly setup and enables security administrators to look at their environment, look at what's going on, and take a look at those different emails. So if you were going through and you found an email that you thought might be suspicious, malicious, and you did want to go ahead and trigger that investigation to let Microsoft Defender for Office do some of the work and decide if something was officially malicious or what else might have looked like it, you can do so from here. And that's what we call just a manual investigation process. Then as an administrator, triggering an investigation. So we have our message actions and we have highlighted trigger investigation. And again, what this is going to do is take a look at this email for those two major purposes. Is this email malicious? Is this an attack or representing a threat to your organization? And also, what else looks like it? What else might be in the environment or out there threatening your organization that is going to require action? And that's that, again, that clustering that we described earlier to use the criteria that's part of the email, look at that makeup, and analyze the other emails to see what else might have that makeup, what has those indicators, files, URL, what else kind of looks like it that is existing within the environment that might require action. And the investigation will take a look, concrete those, show you those results, and say what's the recommended action here. Automate that SecOps process for you and just have an action that we're recommending that you take in order to remediate that threat that you might have seen. So this is how to manually trigger that investigation, manually tell Microsoft Defender for Office 365 to go take a look, see what needs to be done here. With that, though, I'll pass it back off to Daria to go through another scenario.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Okay, so I want to talk about something which I think a lot of you are interested about is how does Microsoft learn from a false positive? By a false positive, I like which Kelly defined earlier was a legitimate email has been blocked as malicious when it should not have been. So this is the scenario where I get an email in my quarantine and I want to release the email as an end user. But as I see from where when I go either to quarantine or when I click like view why it was quarantined, it shows up that it was blocked because of anti-malware policy. So I go ahead and request release for this email. The admin gets the email asking to approve it. They get notified by an alert or an email over the email that uh, Dario has requested for an email release, and they can go ahead and open up the side panel to view all the details about the email. Who was the sender, who was the recipient, What does the email look like? What was the email headers? They can download the email, go about doing investigations. They can release the email, or they can open up the email entity to view the timeline of the delivery, the similar rated emails, the attachments, the URLs, other sort of analysis they have, and why did the email get delivered to quarantine instead of the inbox or the junk folder. They can perform all sorts of analysis as an admin. The admin goes ahead in this case and decides to release the email after having a look at it and saying, okay, this is not clearly bad. So once you click on release email, you have a number of options available. You can release it to all of the recipients who were intended for that email, or release it to just like one or two specific recipients from the list of recipients of that email, original email. And while doing that, you can submit the message to Microsoft, informing the system, okay, this was a misclassification. And while you're informing the system, you can create allows. So by allows, what I mean is you are creating filter specific allows. So let's take the previous message, for example. The message got blocked because the file in the message was detected as bad by the system. So when you're submitting the message, Microsoft, okay, looks through the message and understand, okay, we called out the file as bad, so we will only create the allow for the file. We won't create the allow for the sender, for the URL, for the IP, anything. So the only allow is created for the file. Similarly, if there is a message where the sender and the URL was called out bad, the sender and the URL will be, the allow will be created for those only. So the next time when the sender is sending you an email, the sender filtering will be skipped. But if anything else in the email is bad, like for example, the URL is bad, and if the attacker is trying to improvise, we'll still block the email because we are scanning for everything else except that sender because it's on the allow list. So that's why it's a filter specific allow. And yeah, you can create allows up to any days, up to 30 days, like 1 day to 30 day. And you can put in a note again saying, okay, why did I create this allow? The email has been released while it has been submitted to Microsoft as well. And again, you can see in emails tab of the submission screen that the submission was made as not junk. It's under investigation and status is pending as of now. And after a few hours, the submission results is going to show up. In the meantime, you see that allows have been created for the files present in the email. And as stated, it gets removed after 30 days. And this is where, again, our system learning kicks in. So our system will check whether we have learned from that allow or not. And this feature is already in limited preview for selected tenants already, and we're looking to get it GA'd across different tenants in the coming few weeks. So the system looks and see, okay, have we learned this particular value or not? If we have not learned, let us extend this allow by 30 more days, this filter specific allow. And if you have learned, let's fire an alert and say, okay, we have learned. This is a signal the system has learned and you don't need to allow anything more. It will automatically get delivered to the inbox till it turns bad. And this alert also sends you an email notification on your email account as an admin. So you can go ahead and like either view it from there. Okay, this allow has been learned and this allow has been extended and will be learned in a few more days. And the system is also a little bit smarter here. And it also goes ahead and tell you, okay, we think that this allow is not good as you stated, it is bad. So you might think about removing it so that your users and the organizations are not exposed to FNs. So like yeah, it just plays like it does just an like an informational tip warning to you that an alarm might not be as good as you think. Having said that and covered the last three scenarios along with Kelly, we would like you to go ahead and try out MDO as quickly as you can to actually see all of this in action. It's a 90-day free trial. It includes, does not ask for any payment information. You have access to all the tools from P2 E5 SKUs as well. You can go ahead and try our like the investigations, our hunting experiences, explorer, quarantine experience, along with the submissions experience and our tenant allow block list experience, which gives it a automated intelligence system feed. So having said that, if you have further questions, you can also refer to our documentations at aka.ms/defender0365. With that said, Kelly and I would like to thank all the organizations who have sponsored this event and also a promotional partner. And I think we will open it up for questions.
Okay, looks like right now there are no questions in the chat box. We'll wait for some time.
Yeah, how many days it will be, the mail will be exist in quarantine?
Is your question how many days do we retain an email in quarantine before it's not shown anymore?
Yes, yes.
I think as an end user and an admin, I can view emails for last 30 days, calendar days, last 30 calendar days.
Okay. As a admin, can we retrieve after 30 days?
I think so you can do it, but exactly how you can do it, I'll need to go and check the docs.
Okay, thank you. Is there any policies that we can uh, assign to a where assigned to the mailbox where the mails are quarantined and it can be filtered or anything else automatically?
Uh, what do you mean by filtered or anything else like that?
Yeah, just wanted to release the quarantine mail without without the human invention, like without the admin.
Okay, yeah. So at Microsoft, we have got two types of quarantine. One is called an end user quarantine, and one is called an admin quarantine. So any message which is malware gets delivered to admin quarantine, like messages with worded high confidence phishing malware gets delivered to the admin quarantine, while the all the others get delivered to the user quarantine. So that way, the user can go ahead, release the email, preview the email, do whatever they want in user quarantine, but they don't cannot interact with malware and high confidence phish directly. They can't even preview it. They have to request release so that accidentally or by mistake, they don't have access to messages which are really, really malicious.
Yeah, thanks for the details.
While we wait here and see if any more questions come in, I can reveal a little secret that I put into the presentation. Daria, if you go back to slide 31, when I was talking about our manual investigation process, and we were looking at the Explorer page within Microsoft Defender for Office 365. And I put in, if you actually looked at the emails that were showing up in the screenshot, those were all emails that would have been clustered together in our investigation clustering process. Those were all emails that actually came in through the same attack. So I hope that some of you might have noticed when we were going through and I was talking about the manual investigations, you took a peek at those emails. Those were all emails that would have been clustered together through our investigation because, spoiler alert, they were all going to be bad emails. There was no discussed plans. That was a threat that we mimicked in the environment. So those all would have been clustered together and we would have recommended that they be deleted through the investigation process. We love talking about the clustering and the automatic investigations and how you can use it to just automate that SecOps process, see what else looks like that, which of these things are similar, and let's present those clusters based on the criteria in the original email or the criteria that was part of the original alert, because as I mentioned, we went through the scenario of a user reported submission, but there's other alerts that might trigger those investigations. Maybe there was a malicious click detected. Perhaps we removed an email that had a malicious URL, a malicious file. All those types of alerts would all trigger those investigations. Again, to determine if the email was bad. Some cases we know that email is bad, but when we in question to determine if that email, the original email that the alert was associated with, was bad, and then also use the criteria in the email. We know that attackers try to use different techniques and try to evade our detection. So we use what we have from that original email, and we run a couple of some analysis and go out and see what looks pretty similar to that email. Where did the attacker maybe try to evade their techniques? But we'll try to just grab all of those emails, put them in a cluster so that is prepared, aware, mimicking what a SecOps professional would do in looking for any of those similar emails, bundling them together, and then recommending the action to take out. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that some people probably noticed when we were going through, but the emails that are displayed here would have been in a cluster together, and we would have recommended the deletion of those emails. We can go back to the end one. Now, Daria, I don't even think I told you that I put a little sneak in there, but since we had some time, I've decided to reveal my secrets this time.
Cool. Any other questions we have?
Yeah, one question is there in the chat box. Shoaib is asking, when we configure business email compromise here, are a lot false positive initially, especially with migrated customers from another cloud? Any best practices that should be followed to minimize false positives?
Okay, I think when Shoaib is referring to business email compromise, he's referring to impersonation and spoofing attacks, which are carried out mostly through the system. Is that right, Shoaib, or are you referring to something else? Yep. Yeah. So, yeah. So for coming to spoofing and impersonations, so there are two different topics. For impersonations, what you can do is you can go to the anti-phish policy, which is exactly catching the email in question. And there is an option called trusted senders and trusted domains. So you can add somebody as trusted sender or trusted domain. And what that does it exactly is it will, it's sort of like an override, which says, okay, let's if somebody is coming up as impersonated, it's not actually an impersonation, it's a real user. And the ML system is like the filtering system is detecting them as impersonation, like an impersonate user when they are not. So let's ignore it for a while. And as mentioned, it won't override the other filters in the email filtering stack. So if the person goes and said a malicious URL to the user, it will still get blocked. So that can help you like configure like the false positive. I think there was a session yesterday at 9:30 a.m. IST by Urja on business email compromise. So if you refer to that one, she talks about the best practices on how to configure business email compromise scenarios. And so that was the second point which I'd like to mention. And for spoofing, uh, for most of the senders which are getting detected as spoof, you should request them to fix their auth, either their DMARC or SPF or the DKIM. I hope that answers Shoaib. Yeah, go ahead, Mohammed. Mohammed.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia, and thanks for the session, Kelly. So yeah, I think I have the same question that of what Shoaib has said. Like there are instances where we have enabled the spam filter policies in our organization, and for the past 3 or 4 months back, I think there was heavily false positive emails. I mean, all the business emails because of the spam engines. We have enabled a lot of other features, I guess. I mean, whatever features it had, we have maximum enabled it. But because of it, even the legitimate emails were getting caught under false positive. So all we had to do is like in a day, it's not just single sender, but it from a different domain address. And we keep submitting it to the, there is a submission portal, and it allows similar pattern to be allowed for the next 30 days. And then even despite doing that, we get emails randomly getting what you can say being spammed, or because of false positive, because of general filter policy, because of that engine, uh, in such a way that we logged a case with Microsoft, and then we have to submit them more, and it took a week for them to get it rectified, to get that sorted from their machine learning part. So to coming back to Shoaib, like what other things or configuration can be tweaked, means what is that like we use a spam engine. So is there something where we as an admin can tweak that configuration part like this one? So on in continuation to this, what other challenge we had was like the end users, not all the emails like they have the authority to release certain emails like high phishing content or high malicious or something like that. We have policies in place. When they try to release those emails that are quarantined, it's again false positive. It will be coming to us as an admin saying that release requested. So we need to review, and then we need to approve to get that. So again, users are getting too much frustrated. There is a delay in getting that quarantine email to be reviewed, and because of this false positive, again, we have to rely on that. So what is that? Is there somewhere something like we can tweak the configurations of spam engine? So yeah, probably that is part of Shweb's question as well, like best practices, something that we can do.
Okay. So you stated three things. So I'd like to ask you about the first one. So you mentioned that you went ahead and you did a submission and you created an allow and you still saw emails getting blocked. Could you please elaborate on that?
Uh, for example, the general, I don't have that email handy now. So it just happened 4 months back. So the thing is like whenever an legitimate email comes in, it gets quarantined. So that's how the policies we have made. We have enabled the spam engine. Then in Exchange Online policy, we have the spam engine, anti-spam policies. So there are a lot of other features there. So when we go and see what was the reason for quarantine, it says for us like general filter. and some other thing like highly phishing or malicious content kind of thing. That's what it's happening. So only that kind of scenarios, the email are not authorized for the users to completely release and get them into the inbox. It comes to admin and we need to review and then get them approved. It is from admin we can release. If there is a dependency for the end users upon the admin, I'm not sure if that can be tweaked so that the end user itself can have the authority to release and then get no need to wait for the admins to approve those quarantine email. The wait time can be done. So that is the configuration part. The thing is, why is it like 3-4 months back and certainly some random emails we were seeing high peak, like despite even we submitting multiple random samples to Microsoft to not to block such email things. And when you do the submission, it allows you to what you can say, it will mark them in what is it, there is something called allow sender list, right? In TABL there are two ways of getting it. One, you can add them into this allow list in spam filter policy. Another is something, I think, when you submit, it will go and add them into the allow list for 30 days. You are able to get me
Yeah, I got it
Okay.
completely.
Yeah,
So
that
coming to
that allow list doesn't work, actually doesn't work properly, because if which means if I try to add that sampled email, submit to the Microsoft and allow similar kind of pattern email to not to block in the future for 30 days, that doesn't work properly. It works properly only if I add them into the transport rule or anti-spam phishing policy. So that was a kind of observation I had. So probably we can connect in a separate session apart from this one. Then probably I would provide you the sample, because we have to call log with Microsoft FMEM support, and it took almost 30 days to get this, because it was not just single domain, not a single sender, but it was a random domains. It keep happening.
yeah, I'll love to follow up. We can connect. Uh, I like just like to point out two things, given everybody's here. That
Sure.
Go ahead if you have anything more you want to add.
No. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, like security landscape is ever evolving. So what if it was an actual high confidence fish and the user was able to release, then you will have to go and remediate that account and prevent an account compromise and prevent the organization from getting compromised. So that's why, as I mentioned earlier, we have got two types of quarantine, end user and admin quarantine. End user quarantine gets everything except high confidence fish and malware, while admin quarantine gets it. And so the end user has no way to interact with it, because instead of somebody getting compromised and putting your organization at risk, it's better to like provide a little bit more friction involved than. So that is the overall philosophy, and it changes from organization to organization because each organization operates in a different organizational paradigm. So that's first thing. The second one is the allow policy, which you mentioned about the 30-day one. It's filter specific. So when you went ahead and submitted a few spam based samples to us, we only found in that particular instance that the sender is bad. And so we created a sender allow, which only overrides the sender filters. So if the URL or the file is bad, like a high confidence fish you mentioned or a malware, it will still get delivered to quarantine because the sender was not, like the sender is good, but everything else in the email has been bad. And those controls have been created so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot by allowing in malicious emails and compromising your tenant. And based on recent research, if the attacker has ability to get into the organization, they can compromise another account within 30 minutes. So, and then the reconnaissance continues and your organization becomes very prone to an attack. We can talk about this further, but those were the high level key take points which I wanted to convey out.
Yeah, the thing I got highlighted just now, I got recalled. It's called tenant allow block list. So when you do a submission, it put them into tenant allow list, right?
Yep. Yep.
So you see that on the tab, yeah, that where you can get, it has an expiry date. And but what I observed is this doesn't work. So this is what you are saying, like even if you try to submit this will have them allow, add them the center address or the domain address to be allowed.
So based on the emails you submit, so for example, if you're just submitting an email where the file is bad, the
Yes.
file will get allowed. But if something else in the next email is bad, because sometimes what happens is you create an allow and the attacker compromises that account which has been allowed for, and then you're exposing your organization to risk. So that's why, like, this is how the system works. It's like a filter specific allow. It's not a blanket all allow that if you create a file allow, irrespective of the email, all files contain like will get inside into the organization. No, if anything else in the email is bad, it's not going to come in through.
Okay, so that means if I understand, it is filter specific. So
Yeah.
each time it happened for us for the same domain for a different senders, it seems to be like maybe you would have come for one time as URL for URL reputation, and another is like domains and address kind of thing. So I think that was the reason, despite even submitting it multiple times, I think for each allow submission which I submit, if it has a different pattern of files or URLs or spoof senders or domain address, I think it is getting them allowed in that particular list.
I
So
think
the real bypass is anti-spam phishing policy or the transport rule. Is that how the override can be is more powerful? I mean, it will override whatever we do it in here, right?
no. Even if you create a exchange transport rule or an anti-spam policy and the message is high confidence phish and malware, it will still get delivered to the quarantine folder because there is no override which overrides a high confidence phish and malware.
So the only solution is we have to submit and then, I mean, we need
Yep.
to review and then get them approved to get it released.
Oh, yes, for high confidence phish and malware. So like so the basic philosophy is that when you see a message getting quarantined, either in user or end user, you make a submission, you create the allow once, and as I mentioned earlier on based on Shoaib's comment, we got a allow expiry management in private preview right now for some tenants, and we're looking to take it GA next month. So once the system has learned, it will automatically remove the allow for you. If it not, it will extend the allow for you. So you don't have to come back and keep on doing it. But there is no way to completely bypass high confidence phish and malware at like through MD or filtering stack, because in the past we have seen a lot of customers getting exposed to attacks and shooting themselves in foot because of it, and then coming back and saying Microsoft missed the malicious FN or missed the malicious phish when it was clearly override from your end which delivered the email. So that's why there is no override which allows you to bypass a malware or a high confidence phish.
But in that case, what if it is false positive? So the only ultimate solution is to,
Release, submit, and allow.
but that is taking time, right? So how much time does it Microsoft takes for the machine learning takes to get it rectified? Because it happened for us for multiple things. It did not happen just like that. So this is based on what I have as an admin I have gone through. I mean, I have a ticket. Probably we can take it offline. So that was the reason. So how long does the machine learning from MS takes time to detect this? This is a false positive, and it updates its engine, and then what is the wait time for us actually? Any idea on that? I mean, any input?
Uh, the learning can take anywhere from few hours to few weeks. The ML system exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
that is. So then you are saying if I don't have an option to whitelist, then I will have to wait till the machine learning has to get this fixed.
There's an option to whitelist. I really need to look at your samples before I can answer
Okay.
further, because without looking at samples, I'm just treading in no man's land.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So there is one extended question by Shoaib. He's asking, is it possible to disable bypass EOP?
What do you mean by that, Shoaib? The question is not actually clear to me. Yeah, I got EOP Exchange Online Protection, but I was not clear of the earlier part. Is it possible to bypass EOP?
I mean, I think Shoaib's question is mostly like how to bypass the spam filtering, I guess.
Okay, yeah. So for the spam filtering, when you create a spam policy, there is called something called spam confidence level. So you can adjust how sensitive you are to spam confidence. Like for example, I am an organization which is very, very sensitive to like spam messages. So anything which is having a spam sensitivity of like 2 or more, go ahead and block it for me or get it delivered to the end user's junk folder. That's one thing. Or I'm like, okay, just deliver all the spam confidence messages to me. So you can set your spam confidence level as 9. So accept messages which are ranked as 9, everything else will get delivered to the user's inbox. So yeah, so that's where you can completely configure how sensitive to you are to spam messages, and based on that, the filtering system without any overrides for spam will route the messages either to junk or to inbox. And yeah, the from 0 to 9, it goes from lowest to highest. So 0 is the lowest and 9 is the highest. I hope that answers.
All right. So if there are any further questions, please leave it on the chat box. Can we have the coordinates how they can reach you? Is there any Twitter or email? What is the best way if attendees want to reach you guys?
I think at the moment, the best way to reach us is through email, and I'll follow up offline with you and provide you my email address so that you
All
can
right.
go ahead and like, yeah, share it with, I think, Mohammed.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Fine. Thank you. Our next speaker is ready to deliver his next session. So we will move to the next topic now.
All right. Thank you so much, you all.
Thank you.